Yeah, well, I was talking a bit earlier about this idea I've had of like just sharing a few stories. So it's starting to happen today. It's in fact going to happen right now. We're going to have a bit of a chat, and we're going to share a story. John?
Stu.
Welcome to TLC.
Thank you, darling.
Where do we start? It's 4:27 p.m. Let's start here.
Oh, what a circus, oh, what a show. Argentina has gone to town.
Evita.
The death of an actress called Eva Perón. We've all gone crazy.
Sorry, John.
Oh, gosh. Sort your buttons out, mate.
I'm struggling.
Oh, what a circus. Oh, what a show. Evita. Opening premiere season. 40 years ago. Last week, actually. But, still not bad. My first job in England after flying over there for a holiday. I was there for 2 weeks and was offered a job lighting Evita with David Essex, Joss Ackland, Elaine Page. Oh, my goodness, the list goes on. Good fun, good times.
Awesome, man. So what took you to England in the first place?
British Airways 747.
Okay.
But the fact that I just wanted to see Europe, see Britain, have a really good holiday. I had a brilliant, brilliant history teacher at high school, just up the coast at Miami. And he made me want to see Europe. The way he taught history was brilliant. It was not just your dry old dates, treaties, battles and stuff. He went right into the people and he made it into, like a soap opera.
Okay.
And he gave me the inspiration to get over there and see it, walk in the same dirt that Julius Caesar did. And I literally did that. There's a place on the coast of Kent in the southeast of England called Pegwell Bay. And that's where Julius Caesar landed in Britannia.
Okay.
And it's extraordinary.
My family origins are from the last place that he conquered. Holy Island, off the coast of Anglesey.
Oh, right, off the coast of Wales.
Yeah.
Indeed, yes.
Ancient legend has it that they were on one side of the Menai Strait, the Romans,
yeah.
on the British side, and what they feared what they were going to face on the other side of the Menai Strait. The rumours of I think it was the Druids in those times.
Yes,
was it?
Druids, yeah.
And just their sort of
even
levels of craziness beyond what they'd ever experienced in their sort of
because
like their pagan conquerings.
The Roman reaction to seeing Stonehenge would have been something like a spaceship landing.
Yeah,
because there were no tools left lying around there.
Yep.
To give the Romans even the slightest hint of how those stones got there, where they came from.
Yep.
And so there was an awful lot of strange things going on. And then, of course, Hadrian, when he built his wall, to keep the Scots out.
Yeah, from the west to the east, all the way across.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
And it's still there.
Yeah,
So
it is still there.
Tough old wall.
Yeah. Okay, so you lobbed over to. Obviously, you didn't go from high school in Miami to lobbing over to working for the first time at Evita.
No, next stop after Miami was Melbourne.
Okay,
because that's the farthest I knew, where I knew people from the Gold Coast.
Okay,
because my careers officer at school had said, yes, I think you're going to be in real estate or catering, because that's all the Gold Coast has to offer at the moment. And I couldn't get out of there fast enough. My older brother, Roger, had already left.
It would have
home.
been an outpost back then.
It was tiny. The Pacific Highway, when we first moved there, was one lane in either direction along the coast, the entire coast.
Yeah, right.
Brisbane still had trams.
Wow.
Then they flogged them all off, a brilliant idea, and sent them to Melbourne, where they're still in use. Well, maybe some of them.
I only mentioned on last week's show, it was I think it was the 60th anniversary since the last train crossed the Harbour Bridge, last tram crossed the Harbour Bridge.
Oh, right, the old the Bondi Rattlers.
It was last Friday or Thursday.
Yeah, well, they had to get rid of the...
now they're bringing them back.
They had, they're bringing them back in a light rail and closing down so many businesses, or causing so many businesses losses in George Street in Sydney. It's not been very clever.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it'll make sort of the CBD a much more user-friendly experience for the people that go in there to work every day. On a lot of levels, they're trying to stop people driving their cars in from the suburbs into town. Like it was an issue when I lived there, and now there's so many more people. There's probably twice as many people living in Sydney now as what there was when I commuted. And I don't know. It just seems like a lot of politics is delaying it.
Well, there's really there's one simple solution and a few more complicated solutions. The more complicated solutions are way better railways, really.
Yeah.
The simple solution is a congestion charge.
Yep.
It worked in London. It's spread. It's increased in London since Ken Livingstone first brought it in. So many other boroughs in London are introducing it. It has cut the amount of traffic in London by so much.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The 2012 Olympics wouldn't have happened.
Would you say that it's cut it to the level of expectation that dumping bikes all around inner city, Sydney and Melbourne, like at indiscriminate places?
I can't really talk about Sydney and Melbourne very much because I don't live there anymore.
But have you seen that in the news? Like how they've put these O-bikes around all over the place, and people are leaving them up trees, and they don't have any docking stations for them. Like,
yeah, I know.
They had the best intentions, but
it seemed like a good idea at the time. But when Boris Johnson brought them in London for the Olympics, the Boris bikes, and he also brought in the Boris buses, he had the London buses completely redesigned, way more efficient.
But did they have docks? Like special docks where you had to park the bikes when you finished with them?
Yeah, because
in Sydney, like they didn't. You could just leave them anywhere.
You're on the system as soon as you use your credit card or phone, whatever, to pay to undock the bike.
Yep.
And it's your responsibility to dock it again. Put it somewhere safe where it's designed to be. If it's not docked and found somewhere wrong, then you're nicked, sunshine. You really are.
Well, like to be able to use them, you've got to like pay $65 on PayPal and have an app, and then the bikes have got like a GPS and all that built into them, and. It probably would make more sense. Well, no, even still, like in a place like this, a smaller town, like it's not such a bad idea having a little dock with sort of reasonably priced rentals.
Yeah,
that
sure.
Perhaps I don't know whether or not they'd be tied to like a one of these larger companies that do it, but
but it's such a catch-up thing because if you're introducing bikes like that, and your system has probably already failed because there is a need for another form of personal transport. Now, in Paris, in Amsterdam, Brussels...
is amazing.
Yes, but Amsterdam is also unbelievably flat and the ideal environment to cycle.
For here... Apart from a very small section of the town, like right along the edge of the coast here.
Like where we are getting a nosebleed at the top of the hill.
Yeah, it's like, it's entirely flat. And like, there's a lot of people that, people come to this town to cycle. Like they come on holidays and they bring their bike with them and they bring their lycras and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're out there.
And
Like,
don't they look fabulous?
Even
some of the women.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, I think anybody that's out there that's doing some sort of exercise is pretty fabulous. Like, you know, I didn't really care either way when I was younger, but now I'm older. I'm really starting to dig my exercise. It's one of the few regular things that I have in my life, apart from this, and and other silly little goals. I'm trying to set myself to just do something regularly. But hey, look, I said I wasn't going to break this up with music, but look, we might actually. I got to go to the can, and I got to get us both a bit of a drink, because if we're going to chat for a while, we are going to need like a sip of water from time to time. So, look, I'm actually going to play track 5 off the Evita, and don't tell me it's been. Oh no, it hasn't been playing the whole time.
What, over us? How dare they?
Maybe it has.
Essex, shut up.
No. Oh, thank God. Oh my God. I'm going to put track 5 on. Do you know what track 5 is off the top of your head?
Probably Don't Cry For Me.
Oh, wow.
The big hit.
Serendipitous. Well, I've been playing all ladies, and oh geez, I didn't back announce the tracks that I played before. There was a bit of Ultranata in there, and there was a bit of C.C. Pennison, finally. Yeah.
Is there a T in there somewhere?
Finally.
Not quite.
Anyway, yeah, look, I'm going to play a track now from the era of when you lobbed over into Evita, and we'll get it. Oh, no, hang on. No, I'm not going to do that. That's right. I'm going to play track 5. Too many things for me. I don't know. All right. You're on TLC. This is Stu with John, listening to the Devil's music, listening to a few stories about back in the day. We're back.
Whoops.
We bled over into track 6 and we didn't get the track right. What was that track, John?
Place. That was Good Night and Thank You, which broke, what's our show here called? Devil's
music?
Devil's music?
Yeah.
Well, that track that you did play.
Yeah.
Created a few problems originally, because we had a musical on the West End of London, the Prince Edward Theatre in Old Compton Street, where we had somebody saying, in which case, get stuffed. We had references to gentlemen doing up their trousers and leaving the company of Evita Peron, and David Essex used to deliver those lines with absolute relish. But with Good Night and Thank You, the song before that, at the end of the song immediately before that in the show, was the first opportunity the audience had to react to what was coming at them. And that comes up in around about 18-20 minutes into the show. And when you've got such a musical with so much vibrance going on, Tim Rice's lyrics, Andrew Lloyd Webber's music blasting at you, live orchestra, of course, in the pit under the stage.
Now, I got to say, like, a lot of the music from my heyday of the 1990s in techno, like electronically generated music, but often using synth strings, brass section, woodwind instruments, like, but electronically generated. A few years ago, I think Radio 1 DJ in England called Pete Tong, who did Saturday Night. He's done it for since then, since the 90s. He got this guy called Jules Buckley and the Heritage Orchestra to interpret a whole bunch of sort of techno dance music songs from back in the day, and man, it's just like a wall of sound.
Yeah,
it's so rich and
Pete
so
Tong was
warm.
not just a DJ. Pete Tong was one of the preeminent music producers in London
absolutely.
at the time.
I was just assuming you didn't know. So
Pete Tong for a while was a colleague, and for a lot longer was a close friend of my wife, who was a radio DJ in the UK.
Well, he was one of the initial dudes to bring the Ibiza vibe back to England.
And another really good friend of mine, Pat Sharp, would play Ibiza clubs. Pat was at Capital Radio when I first met him, and there were clubs in Ibiza who would fly Pat out for a weekend for £10,000 a weekend, because the Ibiza market, the Balearics, were just so huge. Hey, little side point: a great white shark was seen off the coast of Ibiza last week.
Wow!
A great white, in the Mediterranean Sea. And when you consider that the Mediterranean is essentially just a very large lake, it's scary knowing that there are things like Jaws running around in there.
Well, apparently there's Irukandji jellyfish are moving down the coast, and I think that they've also this year they've seen like saltwater crocs, like just north of Bundaberg or something, and that, like, the further south they've pretty well sort of found them. It's like,
well, they're bigger than we are, so I guess they can take over the neighbourhood.
Yeah. We need
no problems of saltwater crocodiles around the shores of the British Isles. I think we're pretty safe there, kids.
Oh God, they eat our bait over there. Like, I was over there in 2013 visiting relatives and going to whatever the supermarket was. Actually, it was Tesco, and I was really stoked to go in there, like, after hearing that Lily Allen song. She was carrying bags from Tesco, and I was like, yeah, I've got into Tesco. And they've got, like, all the fresh seafood laid out. And compared to what we have, literally what they've got laid out over there is our bait. Like, it's just the most
that comes from the old Paul Hogan commercial. I remember him when he started doing those, and we have a shot, beachside shot, Paul Hogan walking along the beachfront, and there's a guy hauling in a small shark, and all his mates around him congratulating him and saying, "Beauty, beauty, beauty, haven't you done well?" And Hogs walks up and says, "Oh yeah, that's what we use for bait back home." So what are you going fishing for?
Their premier fish was like sole, which is like a flounder, which I don't think there's even a bag limit on in Australian fishing waters. It's like...
Well, you remember the cod wars of the, I think it was the early 70s, up off the coast of Iceland.
I would have been 5.
Oh,
so
well,
no, I don't.
the Royal Navy was called in to escort the British trawlers off the coast of Iceland, and the Iceland Navy, such as it was, and their fishing boats were out there, and they were bumping into each other, and it was getting very serious because they've been those waters have been fished for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So they're running out of them. So their fish are shrinking.
Let's go back to Evita. You lobbed over in London, and so what year was this?
1978.
78. Okay.
Yep.
So you've lobbed over to London, 78, fresh-faced man in his 20s, like, going to get myself a job in the entertainment.
Well, no, not really. Really went over for a holiday because I was working at the ABC at the time.
So you had a job in the entertainment industry.
Well, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. I owe them my entire career because it was such a superb school for learning about the industry, operations. I was a studio cameraman at the old Gore Hill Studios in Sydney. I worked under a senior cameraman named Dick Bond, who was British, ex-BBC.
Yep.
Vast amount of knowledge.
So you went there as a cameraman. You went there as a dude going on a holiday who was a cameraman.
I left the ABC as a cameraman.
Okay.
I went there to work in their engineering department and just really wanted, aim was to get into the studio as a cameraman.
Sorry, so when you went to England, you intended to work over there, or you were just going on a holiday?
Not
and you
really.
ended up working there?
I'd not had a holiday for 2 years at the ABC, so that I could have 8 weeks holiday taken all in one lump.
Yep.
And I was intending to travel around Britain, travel around Europe. My father was born in the UK, so I wanted to go up to Burton-on-Trent to see where he was born, all that sort of thing. And as I knew, I had some friends who worked for the Robert Stigwood organisation in London who produced Evita. And they had said, if you're over in London, give us a call and we'll get something going. And I was in London, I gave them a call. They said, great, we're going to see Evita next week. Come on along, we'll get you in there. And, oh, by the way, because they got tickets only because they worked at the Stigwood organisation, because the show was sold out for a year already. And the queues for the ticket touts and all that was just extraordinary.
I think my mum and dad went and saw it when it first played in Australia.
Ah, right. Well, luckily for them, I wasn't working on that production, even though I was offered it. But anyway, so I went to see the show with my friends. Comes the interval, the curtain comes down, my friends get off and walk off to the left to the bar. I got up and walked to the right because I could see at the end of the row we were sitting in that was the lighting control booth. And I knew what was going on there technically, and I knocked on the door, and this big woolly head looked up at me and said, yeah. And I said, just want to say you're doing a really nice show. It's really great. And but you've got a great board to do it on. And this woolly head looked at me and said, well, thank you very much. Do you know what board this is? And I said, yeah, it's a Strand MMS. He said, do you know how to work it? I said, yes, matter of fact, I do. He said, do you want a job? And I said, yes.
I hate doing this.
Well, no, the thing is that a Strand MMS was designed from the ground up as a television lighting console.
Okay.
It was it was brand new. And
but hang on, how come this guy was lighting, but what, he didn't want to?
No. It cost the Stigwood organisation over £1 million to put on Evita.
Yep.
First of all, they had to clear out the theatre, which had been used as a Cinerama cinema in Britain since about the 1950s or 60s when Cinerama happened. And they needed a completely new lighting rig set up and everything. So the Strand MMS was brought in, and it was brand new in the television industry, to such an extent that about 6 or 8 weeks previous to that day, I had done a course on one of these exact same boards at the ABC in Sydney.
Ah, okay.
Right, because as a cameraman, you're taught about lighting and all that, because it's an integral part of your job. And I learned how to work this Strand MMS, and it was digital. My goodness me, digital. We didn't know the meaning of the word in those days. And anyway, Mick Hunter, I think his surname was, definitely Mick. He had been trained how to work the board. He was the deputy electrician. The senior electrician was the chap who had been the projectionist in the old cinema, so he was not up to learning all new technology and stuff. So Mick had done Mick Underwood, that was definitely his name, Underwood. He had done the course on it. He was also teaching another guy on the crew how to work this board. That meant neither of them was getting a day off. So if they could get somebody else who knew how to work the board to come in and do it,
alrighty,
that because I just came out of nowhere, fully trained on a Strand MMS board.
Okay.
And they were delirious. And so I phoned up the ABC from the theatres
Which
backstage
in those days
switchboard.
would have been a mission, I guess, and would cost like $1,000 a minute or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I didn't care because, the theatre was paying for it, did it on their phone. And managed to find out the thing I had to do was to apply in writing to the ABC so that I could have some leave without pay and we were looking at 6 months leave without pay.
Okay. So, yeah,
Right,
all
because
so
it
you were
was
just
the
on
sort
like
of-
your annual leave for
Yes,
for the ABC.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And we found out that that was the way to do things and all that. So I sent off my letter to the ABC, and about 6 weeks later, I got a letter back saying I was fired because I think Malcolm Fraser was running the government at the time, and of course, we all know that right-wing governments like to screw the ABC. And because
They're trying to.
well, plus ça change, mate. But anyway, long story short, because leave without pay, my job wasn't really necessary. So my job was then got rid of. I didn't have a job, so I thought, woohoo, I can stay in the UK.
Sweet.
And 261 performances of Evita later, 6 months, I found a job in a non-broadcast television outfit, which is great. And of course, in the UK then, it was a closed shop for union things, so many union things, which wasn't a great idea.
Yep.
Deal was you can't have a job in the industry, in the entertainment industry, if you don't have a union ticket. And of course, you can't get a union ticket until you have a job. So catch-22.
Yep.
So eventually, an advertising agency where I had some friends created a job specifically for me as a television cameraman. And that's how I got my union ticket.
Oh, okay.
And I wound up staying there for nearly 30 years.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, and let's jump forward, because when I first found this out about you, this is what I really, really wanted to talk about. It just happened that it was this Evita anniversary. But let's jump there to when you went to Gulf War 1991, 92?
Mm-hmm. Well, post-Gulf War.
Post-Gulf War, okay.
Yeah,
so
Kuwait.
How long after we've pushed back Iraq into Iraq out of Kuwait did you arrive?
Oh, probably 3 weeks after the hostilities ceased. The deal being that Saddam Hussein had set the oil wells on fire and opened the taps, so an awful lot of oil was flowing out into the Gulf. Now, the town where I lived in the UK, Maidstone in Kent, which is where our broadcasting studios were, where we made programs, where we broadcast programs from, was also the hometown of, I think it's 42 Royal Engineers of the British Army.
Yep.
And the British Army, with a whole load of other organisations, was tasked to help shut down the fires and cap the wells and do all that sort of thing. And as there was an existing television news organisation in town, the Ministry of Defence in the UK said, right, we're going to send you guys out, the engineers, the sappers, send you guys out to help capping the oil well situation. And as we have a television news company in town, we're going to invite them to come along and have an absolutely wonderful PR exercise. We've just kicked the Saddam Hussein out of town, and now we're going to fix the damage. And I was there for a week, met some extraordinary people, saw some extraordinary things. You may have heard of the Basra Road, where there was an absolute massacre of Iraqi troops retreating up the Basra Road, trying to get out of Dodge. And, well, they cleared most of the bodies out of there.
Okay.
They pushed the vehicles off the road, but it was an extraordinary scene of destruction. It's amazing what what munitions can do. And the other awful thing was going down to the beach and seeing the oil just pumping into the Gulf and seeing all the wildlife just absolutely black with oil. And it was... Have you seen the film... well, if you have seen the film Three Kings, George Clooney film,
No, I haven't.
set towards the end of the Gulf War, the way the sky is depicted with all that black smoke just going up into the sky and just really blotting out the sun. It was just, well, talk about post-apocalyptic. It was incredible. But one of the extraordinary characters I met out there was Red Adair, the Texan oil man who made his name in capping oil fires, and he was played... his character was played by John Wayne in the film about the oil capping things they used. They based him, John Wayne's character, on Red Adair.
Okay.
So that was pretty cool. But no, it was it was an amazing thing.
You arrived at the airport on a military plane or on a commercial flight or a rented commercial flight? Or
a Royal Air Force Super VC-10 that had been converted from its British Airways career to an Air Force troop transport aircraft. And the wonderful things about that is when the Royal Air Force do that, when they convert an existing airliner to a troop transport, first thing they do is turn the seats around.
Yeah.
So it's much safer in the event of a forced landing if you're braced in the back because you've got that huge, great seat back protecting you instead of just a little belt where you're just going to fall forward like that.
Yeah, right.
And so it's really weird reversing out of an airport to take off and reversing into an airport when you're landing.
But I guess that's what the stewards do most of the time because they're usually sitting on those ones facing everybody at the front.
Yeah, but that's only a couple of them.
Stewards,
or
airline assistants,
flight attendants,
that's
cabin crew. But that's only the ones sitting up the front. Everybody else in the back. And the reason that airlines don't do it is because even though it's way safer for the passengers in the event of a forced landing or an uncomfortable landing.
Well, people would probably get sick, wouldn't they?
No, people get freaked out.
Okay.
Because it's an admission of how dangerous air travel is.
Yeah, right.
Not so much air travel, but
if you have a crash,
if you have an eventful landing.
I only saw. I think I might have even made a note of it on my thing the other day. I think it was the 3rd or the 2nd of July was the busiest air traffic day ever. With there was I think there was over 200,000 flights in one day, and it had beaten the record by a considerable amount.
That's worldwide, I guess.
Yeah.
So what happened then?
It showed a map of all these different planes, I guess, at some point in their flight. It was just oh my God, it was just the whole world was a cluster of yellow for all these tiny little planes.
Well, one of the busiest for any one country is Thanksgiving weekend in the United States of flights going in and out of Atlanta Airport, because from Atlanta you can reach most of the US in one hop. And that's why it's just so incredibly busy. The other nice thing about the Royal Air Force conversions of old passenger airliners is the decor, because you can see the brush strokes in the paint. They paint the interior of the fuselage. I don't really recommend the coffee. In fact, I prefer the tea on a Royal Air Force flight.
So were you on one of those ones where you're sitting on the floor up? Oh no, you're saying the seats were facing backwards.
No, this was a kosher former. This is what the press flew out in.
Yep. Okay.
The poor old army guys. They're flying around in Hercules or C-17s and not nearly as comfortable as what I flew in. In fact, it was the prior to the Gulf War. I'd had a an involvement, again with the British Army, is with the Desert Rats, the 7th Tank Brigade. They were based in Germany still in those days. Funnily enough, the building of their base in Fellingbostel was originally a Waffen-SS Panzer regiment from the Second World War. It was the serious bad guys who had that originally. And I went out there to see the tanks being painted pink in their desert camouflage before that war. And again, a whole pile of journalists being taken off on a PR exercise. And we flew out of the same airport that we went to before we went to Kuwait, which is Bryce Norton, which is Royal Air Force, mostly transport base. And it's also their VIP airport. Okay. And but at least
so did it have a VIP lounge?
Yes.
Oh, but, really? An Air Force base?
Well, hey, it's the Royal...
I guess they have an officers' mess at least.
It is the Royal... Oh, yeah, there's all that. That officers' mess. Now, the brilliant thing, when one... I don't know what it's like in Australia, but when one is dealing in a press capacity with the British military, the press are made honorary members of the officers' mess where you are, you see. Yep. Or if you're in the Navy, if you're dealing with the Royal Navy, you're made an honorary member of the wardroom.
Yep.
And you get a similar sort of rank, I'll use an army rank, of captain.
Yep.
Right? You're slightly above a lieutenant. Okay. Right, but you have nowhere near the pull that a major might have, and you're pretty equal with captains. It's all like first name
Captain
stuff.
Pierce and Captain Hawkeye and Major Burns and Major Houlihan, and
little bit of that. But the thing about the 7th Armoured Brigade is that they have, and I don't have too much experience with other officers' messes, but I've eaten in some fabulous restaurants in the UK, really extraordinary food. And the food at the 7th Armoured Brigade is the best I've ever had from any military anywhere on the planet. It was absolutely superb. You could have picked all that up and put it down at a state dinner at Buckingham Palace or the Dorchester or the Ritz or the Savoy. Any of the great hotels in the world would have been very happy to have had their kitchen staff working for them. It was magnificent.
Generally, Army food has a bit of a sort of reputation, I guess, as a...
Yeah, but it works. But also, when you think about what it's for, I mean, there's a really good thing for ex-Army people. Go and work in hospital kitchens. That will certainly improve the recovery rate, I'm sure.
All right, look, we're going to have actually, what we're going to do is, I was going to put a track, I am going to put a track on, going to hear a few sponsorship announcements, then we're going to wrap it up with John, and then we're going to finish the show with some tracks. I might do a mix, I don't know. One of these days I'm going to come in and do a mix from Go to Woe and just not gibber on, just play music. It's 5:08 p.m, you're on TLC. It was a cracker of a day today, wasn't it? Love it. Love it. All right, this is Lenny Kravitz, Mr. Cab Driver. This is 100.3 FM TLC. All right, we're back. We were just chatting, and while the sponsorship announcements were on, and John was telling me that when he went to the Middle East, he also went to Jordan, and Jordan, my uncle went to Jordan. He actually told me, if you're going to go anywhere in the Middle East, go to Jordan. And serendipitously, John had a cracker of a time in Jordan.
It was amazing, and I am so in agreement with your uncle It's Jordan, or the Royal Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, if you like. I mean, most people are aware of Petra, which is just utterly breathtaking.
My uncle said Petra was better than the pyramids.
I can't comment because I've not seen the pyramids.
Yeah, no, that's what my uncle said.
But most people's introduction to Petra is the final sequence of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, when they come rushing out of the Treasury building.
Okay.
And that's incredible. Now, but the reason I was in Petra was to attend the then King Hussein's birthday party down in a place called Wadi Rum, which is just dripping in history, almost as much history as Petra.
Now,
did.
Wadi is that? That's like a sand flat.
It's a dried up riverbed. From
okay,
ancient riverbed.
Okay.
And I think the first time we saw that in a film was in Lawrence of Arabia, where Anthony Quinn's character says to Lawrence after they've met, "It is my pleasure that you dine with me in Wadi Rum."
Ah, okay.
Now, I knew about that, so when I was offered this gig in Jordan, because I knew we were going to Petra, I went out and bought the extended edition of Lawrence of Arabia. So I actually had David Lean do the recce for me.
So are we talking on VHS here, or?
No, we're talking what I got the tape on, the film. That was VHS. You know, that was back in the olden days, you know, when things had to move if you wanted to watch them.
Not the real olden days when it was still fighting out between beta and VHS.
Oh, no, but, you know, anybody in the professional industry will tell you that beta was a way better format than VHS.
Yeah, I know.
But anyway, so this was going to be a hot air balloon rally, and it was a hot air balloon rally. It was the first and so far only hot air balloon rally ever held in the Middle East. And it was just magnificent, and did a deal with Royal Jordanian Airlines to travel first class.
That was with who you were working with?
No. I was working for an independent producer who'd set the whole thing up.
Okay.
And I had done a fair bit of hot air balloon work previously, because I was lucky enough to work on Richard Branson's transatlantic hot air balloon thing in 87, I think it was. Yeah,
he was like a swashbuckling dude back then, wasn't he?
He was, well, he still is. Yeah. He buckles the swash better than anybody I've ever seen do it. But anyway, so we turn up at the at Heathrow Airport, the Royal Jordanian terminal, to be met by the head honcho, who's wringing his hands in a very apologetic way, and we thought, oh God, what's happened here? And it's the only time in my life it's ever happened to me, and I pray it never happens again. I was downgraded from first class to business class.
Oh no.
The reason being that former King Constantine of Greece was on the same flight. He was going to the same birthday party that I was. But his people, in quotes, had requested that only His Majesty and his party were to travel in first class. You know, we other peasants had to move that back down to business class.
I've never been downgraded. I've never been
in
first class.
Well, you can be told just to get off the damned aircraft.
Get into the toilet.
That's a downgrade. But anyway, after we'd taken off and they turned the...
And then I get like 50 people filming me on an iPhone and I'm going, no way, and they're dragging me off.
You see, I was doing it in the days when, you know, before iPhones and stuff. And if anything going on television was shot by a professional.
Was doing it back in the day before iPhones, thank God.
Anyway, after we got up to cruising altitude, the King came back, King Constantine actually came back and apologised for the... any inconvenience, and I said, that's perfectly all right, Your Majesty. Let me buy you a drink. And, you know, and he laughed and thought it was quite amusing and sat down and we chatted for about 15, 20 minutes. Okay. And it was absolutely cool. And then after, the travel arrangements, everybody was staying at Amman, the capital, except my producer had worked out a really brilliant deal for the travel down to Wadi Rum. He'd via the Ministry of Information and Tourism, he managed to wangle us a ride on an army helicopter, or an Air Force helicopter, from Amman down to Wadi Rum, where all...
A Jordanian Air Force helicopter?
Yes,
Yeah.
Royal Jordanian Air Force. While all the rest of the poor press pack had to take a bus, or buses. And they left really early in the morning. We had our car take us out to their base.
It's driving amongst those dunes, though. Like, I've done it. I did
It's
it in 1985
way,
in Dubai. Like,
mate, it is way better to fly over them in a helicopter
well.
that you're not paying for.
Yes.
Right? And we actually saw the caravan of buses going through the deserts
you
and
saw
stuff.
them from the color.
We saw it from the air, yeah. Sadly, we weren't allowed to buzz them. However, when we got to Petra, which is buried into a whole bunch of cliffs and stuff like that, the pilot knew the turf, obviously, and we were flying along probably about 300 feet tops above the dirt, and then suddenly the dirt drops away about 800 feet down to the desert floor where Petra is, and he just followed the terrain.
Wow.
And we just dropped out of the sky. It was such a hoot.
Like in 0G, were you?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. But it was such fun. And then having got there and setting up and just this most amazing scape. And I said the first time we saw Wadi Rum was in Lawrence of Arabia. I think the last time we saw Wadi Rum was in The Martian with
My favourite Martian.
No, The Martian. It was about the guy whose Mars is being populated. Big storm comes along.
Oh, Matt Damon, was it?
Matt Damon. Yeah.
Okay.
All the exterior scenes on the surface of Mars were shot in Wadi Rum.
Oh, okay.
And when I saw it, I thought, I know where that is. That's not on Mars. I have been at the very foot of that big...
When I drove through the dunes, I said to my uncle, can we just stop? I just want to run to the top. And I just ran to the top of this dune. There's this photo of me, and I'm just like this tiny little thing on this massive sand dune. It's amazing how big they are.
I mean, it's just an extraordinary environment. And I bumped into two people that I'd known previously when we were in Wadi Rum. One of them was Per Lindstrand, who was Richard Branson's pilot and trainer on all his ballooning adventures.
Yep.
And I'd met Per previously in the United States at Sugarloaf in upstate Maine, where the balloon was launched from.
Oh, okay.
And, kicked around with him there, and he took us on a flight around, the area. We had a quiet day one day. And I went for a flight with Per in his balloon, and we got becalmed, which was quite bizarre. There was just no wind at all, and we just parked on top of this peak until Per could tell that the wind had come up, and so we just took off, and then we've blown away, and the recovery support trucks found us, and all. It wasn't a problem. It was just funny being becalmed in a hot air balloon, perched on top of this peak, and looking around us, we could see Israel off, to the east, Syria to the north, Saudi Arabia to the west, and Egypt behind us to the south.
Wow.
And the Gulf of Aqaba and all that sort of stuff. And we were just laughing like drains that we were stuck up there. And then a couple of days later, at one of the pilot briefings, there was this very, very attractive, rather olive-complexioned lady that I spotted, and I thought, I know you from somewhere. And I got a sort of similar reaction from her. You know, there was these two eye things. Until I finally walked up and said, "Hi, I'm not sure. I'm sure I know you from somewhere. My name's John Bunch. Was from Australia originally. I may have met you there, or I met you." And it was a lady named Judy Lynn, with whom I had worked on The Young Doctors. I was a cameraman. I can't remember the character that she played, but she was an American doctor. You know, but she was also a Channel 9 news weather presenter.
Okay.
In Sydney back in the 70s. And it turned out that Judy had chucked all the showbiz stuff and with a chap, this was all many years previously to what was happening just then. And she'd taken up ballooning in a big way and had a ballooning school experience going. I think it was in Coonabarabran.
Okay.
Now I'm talking now. 1991 maybe. I think it was November 1991. And so just. The absurd thing of bumping into people that you've known from other lives, other countries, other continents, and then just meeting up like that.
There's a guy in this town that I'd known for 5 years, and then after knowing each other for 5 years, we realised that his mum's sister is married to my dad's father's brother.
Wow.
So my dad and him share a cousin.
Right.
My second cousin is his cousin.
Yeah.
My second cousin used to come out and stay at, back in the 80s, used to come and stay at our house for a few weeks.
That's one for who do you think you are?
And then she'd go off and stay with someone else, and I was just like, who are those people that she goes and stays with, Mum? And, blah, 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 blah. And it turns out she went and stayed with this guy's house down at Cronulla. And I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's a small world.
Small world.
Yeah, it's a small world.
Look, we're going to wrap it up with that was awesome having John here. This is my new thing that is going to be a part probably of this show that I'm doing now of the Devil's Music. Sometimes it might go for a long time. Sometimes it might go for 10 minutes. Sometimes it'll happen a few weeks in a row. Sometimes it won't happen. But yeah, I've decided I'm going to start recording stories and I'm going to start publishing them as podcasts. So yeah, keep an ear to the ground, and I'll let you know what's going on with regards to it. I'm probably going to put them up on YouTube as well, along with all the little promotional videos that I put up once a week on Instagram and Facebook. I'm going to bring them all together and make a YouTube channel and hopefully organise some sort of podcast business or something like that. But yeah, it's called Back in the Day, and it was awesome to have John talking to us today. Thanks for being here, John.
Pleasure being your guinea pig. Stu, no problem at all, mate.
Thanks very much.